On this installment of Cade Made, I'm creating this large concrete Mediterranean-style vessel using Portland cement and old towels. First, I started by cutting up my old towels in smaller sections for layering, and then I lined a large plastic old container with trash bags to help my project from attaching to it. This was actually incorrect, but we'll get back to that later. But first, we need to talk about our cement mixtures. The first and main ingredient we're using is Portland cement, which is a powdery limestone and other powdery solids, which is basically our flour for our purposes here. And then our next is play sand or sand, which is used as a filler in aggregate and strengthener. And then lastly, we're using acrylic bonding adhesive. And simply what this does is it allows each of our layers to layer on and connect cohesively. When mixing these ingredients, we want to make sure we're mixing our dry ingredients, which in this case is Portland cement and sand. And I just want to make sure that that's all mixed together properly before adding in the water elements. In our water mixture, we want to just have a little bit more water than the Portland cement we're actually mixing into it. I add the acrylic bonding adhesive to that, and then I slowly mix in the dry ingredients into the water to create the different mixes. This is the wet slurry mix, which we'll be using with the towels. And then this is the dry mix, which we'll use for sculpting the exterior of our vessel. You'll want to wet your towels before putting them in the slurry mix and then layering them on your vessel. Now, what I've done here is incorrect. I actually did it going on the inside, and you see how they're falling down. I turned the bag or the vessel upside down and put my trash bags over that outside part and began again. And this is the proper way of doing this so that gravity is working in your favor. And I was able to just get that first layer on and let that dry. And essentially it created the exact same shape as the vessel I put the pieces of slurry towels on. I added a wire around the bottom, in this case, of my layering process, and I was able just to create a solid line around the parameter. After allowing that first layer to completely dry, I began adding the second layer, which is my sculpting mix, and this simply adds reinforcement and strength to the bottom layer before moving forward with it. It additionally starts creating what will be the ultimate shape of the vessel you're creating. So my theory of putting the trash bags on the vessel that I'm shaping my initial layer over was correct, and it allowed that plastic container to pull right off of my new creation. And essentially now I could reuse that piece if I wanted to. This is the yoga ball that I used for my video where I created a large outdoor orb fountain, and then using this wreath form, I blew up that yoga ball a little bit more, put the wreath form on there, and started putting the towels around that form, which will create the upper rim of my vessel. And essentially this process is exactly the same as the bottom part of this process. I additionally added a ring to pull those towels tight to create an upper rim, and then added on towels over the edge of the bottom part that I created first in order to combine the two pieces, the upper and lower part of that. And I just bury these wires into the towels inside. After the upper first layer is completely dry, I was able to take the yoga ball out of the vessel and start adding my additional layers of sculpting mix. I first did one layer on the interior pretty haphazardly just to seal it off, and then added a little bit more concrete bonding adhesive to the exterior and started adding the first layers of my final sculpting mixes. And this is where we really begin to see the vessel take shape and start to try to make it more of a studio pottery vibe, start to get that surface nice and smooth as if it was built on, out of clay. I found in these sculpting layers, my greatest tool was my hands, wearing these gloves and just going in circular motions around the piece. If I had a lazy Susan, it would have been dynamic and I probably would have gotten a more even result. But using a tile sponge, I was able to just wipe off of the layers, of course, soaking that and cleaning out that sponge and just getting it nice and smooth. And then I added these decorative banding layers, which I just thought added a little bit more style and a little bit more weight to the piece, especially to just balance out the weight of the rim at the top of it. And so that it wasn't just a regular vessel shape, add a little something extra to it. At this point in the process, you don't have to allow every single layer to dry before adding on these decorative pieces. As long as you let it dry and it's just a little bit hardened so that you're not getting additional fingerprints into it, you can start adding these additional pieces. And you'll want to keep the vessel nice and moist with a spray bottle throughout these different things, because concrete likes to attach to wet concrete. Dry doesn't like to attach to wet, or vice versa. And then again, wiping it down with my tile sponge, just getting it nice and smooth. To take this project one step further, I wanted to add a final layer of smooth texture as well as color to the project. So I mixed a very wet slurry in order to just wipe a surface layer over the outside of the vessel. What's different about this mix is that I only used acrylic bonding adhesive in the wet mixture. I did not use any water. I wanted this to attach fully, and I wanted it to be somewhat waterproof. Making sure I completely wet down the surface of the vessel before adding this final slurry layer, I also realized that I had made it a very, very, very much too light color for the application I was hoping to do with this vessel. So I mixed another batch together of different color sanded grouts. And what I did was unfortunate, but I actually created exactly the color of concrete, of Portland cement, on the second round. But what this layer actually does is it fills in minor imperfections in not only the surface quality, but maybe some small cracks that happen in the drying process of creating the initial vessel. So it's a really nice finish layer to add. And I'm just simply wiping all of that down with my tile grout sponge, rinsing it out a lot, and then you're getting this lovely vessel as it is. Now, adding more layers never hurts to this. So after that completely dried, I wet down the entire vessel and added a more mocha colored and more brown color slurry of the sanded tile grout, and it ended up just being the absolute most warm, wonderful color, and just made it a little different and made it look a lot less like it's made of cement and towels. And every layer just added a little bit more to this vessel, and I have no regrets over adding any additional slurry layers over to the exterior just to give it a more refined quality. In my experience with concrete so far, I just love it as a material. And if you've been in the market for any planting vessels that are the large size in terracotta or clay, you'll know that they're rather expensive. And this project essentially cost about $75 front to back. It's a great project for somebody who needs something like this. And you can see why I colorized it so it doesn't match all of the surrounding concrete. But I think this project turned out great, and I would totally recommend doing it for the beginner person experimenting with concrete or the more experienced one. If you'd like to see more of my adventures of concrete, please check out my other videos on my channel and subscribe. And otherwise, take care, and we'll see you next time here on Cade Made.